Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. It is that time of the month again where we're doing the August wrap-up. This month was a very small month compared to last month. Last month, of course, was my biggest reading month of all, and this month is gonna be my smallest reading month so far of all. I only read 5 books, right? Yeah, I had to double check in my mind. I feel like I had one more, but no. So a lot of these were library books that I had and then returned, and then one is an audiobook. So let's get into it. The first one that I am going to talk about is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This book was the third Riley Sager book that I read. It was probably the best one that I read out of his, in my opinion. I gave this one 4 stars, where his other 2 that I read back in July were only 3 stars. And that's because this one I felt like interested a little more in what was going on and happening. The ending was a lot more interesting. It had a part where I was just like, how is she gonna get out of this? The main character's name is Jules, by the way, and she's staying at a hotel, I think it was called the Bartholomew. I might be messing that part up. I had trouble saying it when I was reading the book. But she's staying there. She's getting paid to stay there for 3 months, and it's crazy and it's great. She's dealing with all these issues in life, and she's like, this is my way to get a fresh start. I get a free place to stay, I get paid to stay, and that'll help me with the rest of my life. And little does she know that something fishy is going on, because fellow person apartment sitter, I think is what they call it, so it's like an apartment complex, but it seems like a hotel in my mind, but it's apartment, and she's apartment sitting, and she's getting paid. But there's other people there who are apartment sitters, and what was it? She's got someone else that she met that I think was the floor below her, who's doing apartment sitting, and she just disappears all of a sudden. And she's like, what happened? Where is she? What's going on? And she's trying to figure it out. And like I said, she finds out a lot more. This book, I didn't think that it was going to go the route that it did. It seemed a little different than what I thought, but it's very interesting, in my opinion. So like I said, I gave this one 4 stars. I like this one the best so far out of all the Riley Sager books that I read, which, like I said, this was only the 3rd one, so there's still plenty more to try and see if he has other good books as well. The next one was the audiobook, and this one was actually a book club pick for the month of July, and I didn't finish it in July. I finished it in the beginning of August, and it's called If Something Were to Happen to Me? No, If Something Happens to Me. If Something Happens to Me. And I gave this one a 3 star. It was just meh for me. I think the reason I started this early on in July, by the way. And then I was like, no. And then it was getting closer to our little book club virtual meeting. And I was like, oh, I should restart this, because I remember some of it, but maybe I missed some important details. So I restarted it. And then it took so much longer. I should have just started it from where I was. I was not interested. It was boring to me. And I hate to say that. But I gave it 3 stars because there was still some parts where I was like, what and how and why is this included? So basically the premise of the story is that Ryan, his girlfriend, their senior year of high school, they're about to graduate. She all of a sudden is gets taken. He's with her. He gets knocked on the back of the head, and she gets taken. And of course, he's the first suspect because he was the last one seen with her, and he's like, I'm telling you what I saw, what happened, and stuff. So of course, no one believes him. So then, a few years later, down the line, I don't remember how many, he kind of changed his last name so people wouldn't associate him with the case. And he's on a trip in like Europe, which I was like, fancy. And he's on a trip in Europe, and back then he had it where he remembered this guy who had like no fingers on his hand, or he's like missing a finger or something. And he sees the guy on his trip, and he's getting notes that say, hey, I know who you are, right? And so he's like, okay. And he's just like, I'm here on a trip. I don't want no one of my college friends on this trip to know what's going on. And then, of course, you have multiple perspectives. So then you're dealing with him and that. And then you get this girl, I think her name was Pippa or Poppy. Can't remember. But she becomes a new sheriff deputy in the hometown where this whole thing happened. She got like discharged from the military for whatever reason, and basically she gets assigned to this case because they find a car in the lake. Her car, or a car. I don't know whose car. I think it was the girl who went missing. I think it was her car, but there's 2 dead bodies and it's not hers. So they're like, who are these? Where is she? What happened to her? So they're reopening the case. And then you get one, and this is the one where I was confused at first. Later on it makes sense, but at first I was confused. And I remember his name because it was the weirdest name to me. It was Shane O'Leary. And you get his thing, and he from the premise of what I got from his chapters early on, he's like a mob boss. He's like protecting his city and town, and like you don't want to mess with him. And like he's got this wife that he loves and has been with since they were like in high school. They're high school sweethearts. And then they got a son, and they just had him put into a private school, and it's like really fancy and expensive, but you know, he's struggling to fit in. And then like his wife is always constantly concerned about if she made the right choice sending the boy to the school, and the husband's like, I paid a lot to get him in there, it'll be fine, I'll talk to so and so and see what's going on. So he does. And then later on down the thing, his son kills himself, and you find out that he was getting bullied by kids at school. And then of course, as a mob guy, he was like, okay, I'll handle it. And so people from school that were involved in his son's offing himself basically start disappearing and having freak accidents. So, and then in regards to the story title, so with Pippa Poppy, whatever her name is, in this car they find the girl's bag. I forgot her name. I'm gonna be honest, I forgot. It was not that important to me. Even though the main plot of this story was her being disappeared and what happened, I don't remember her name. But in her bag, she had a sealed, like in a plastic bag, sealed, a thing that says, if something happens to me. Hence the title of the book. And like, it's like one of those like puzzles kind of, where it's like, it has number, and like, there's a specific word for it. Don't remember that. But basically, it's a word for this puzzle where it's basically it's like a code where this is the page number, paragraph number, line, word kind of thing, right? And so they're trying to figure out what book. And then they end up finding out from Ryan that it wasn't a book, but it was a picture or like a letter that this girl had from her family that's in like a fancy museum. And then it's like line, word, number kind of thing. Like word, it's line, word, letter. Yeah, it goes like that. It's weird. Like I said, I remember it, but I don't remember it, and it hurts my head and stuff. And the ending, like I said, it was predictable after a minute. You're like, oh, I know what's going on now. I know. So it wasn't that great. So, next one was Hooked. This one I got from the library because it looked interesting, and it was a Peter Pan retelling. And for some reason, I'm in this mood to have like certain fairy tale retellings. And this one looked super good. And my only regret is that I found out later on that it's a book 2. And so there's a first book that I probably should have read first to understand what was going on, kind of, and all that. But, you know, it's not a horrible thing to where I don't 100% know what's going on because I didn't read the first book. But I'm pretty sure if I read the first book, it would have been a lot easier to understand. And this book, I gave it 4 stars. It was really interesting, really good. Like, I really liked it. It was a different idea on Peter Pan retelling about how there's like a different portal or like dimension in a sense to the world. And this is following Captain Hook, but like his name is James. And I laugh at that too because since my husband's name is James, it's funny to me. But basically, so he basically remembers from, and like the way it does it is a little tricky because like it'll go to like his memories of like the past and like how he got to Neverland and like what happened and what made him basically be Captain Hook. And like the one thing is that he always constantly remembers like this drowning incidents, and like always fighting Peter Pan but never winning, and like it was just he kept dealing with that. But then like he found a way to go back to the real world, and he's dealing still with demons from the Peter Pan and from some other stuff that he was dealing with after he left finally Neverland. And then Wendy is in there. The first book is Wendy Darling, and that one has to deal with Wendy and her daughter. And her daughter basically gets kidnapped by Peter Pan and taken to Neverland. So Wendy goes back to Neverland and stuff to try to save her daughter and basically take care of Peter Pan. And so the consequences in Hooked are that like Wendy is still involved and her daughter is still kind of involved because there's a beast that was chasing Hook, and he, while dealing with his emotions and his issues, somehow opened the portal and let this beast back in. And the beast tries to go after him, but there's issues with the beast and stuff. And so then the beast basically is going and attacking things that he can sense like are tied to Neverland. So he goes after Wendy's daughter, whose name I can't remember, but he goes after her and her home, and she's not there, but her roommate is, and then her roommate basically ends up dying, and this causes issues with the daughter because she was already kind of still dealing with issues, like she's trying to go into the medical field, but it's still, but it's still in the time where women weren't meant to be doctors. They were okay to be nurses and like help change and do certain things, but they weren't meant to be doctors. And this girl is like, no, I'm gonna be a doctor. But her friend, whose name I can remember the friend's name more than I can remember the daughter's, which is bad, but her friend basically dies and she's dealing with that. And then again, she was dealing still with the trauma from when she got taken to Neverland previously, and her mom didn't tell her about this stuff and stuff, so she's still upset at her mom and mad at her mom. But somehow her mom appears all of a sudden after her friend died, and she doesn't know how, but she's suspicious that she knows how or why. And of course then Wendy bumps into Captain Hook, or James as he goes by now, and like he's so completely different from what she remembers in the book or in her time in Neverland. In the book, he's old, he's limping, he's got a cane, Like, his hair is gray, he's frail and like skinny. Like, he's not the strong Captain Hook that she remembers. So basically they deal with the beast that's attacking them, and then yeah, it was so good and it was so interesting. And like I said, I love that book. It was very good for what it was. And I still kind of want to read the first one to see like a little more about that, because like I said, they did briefly describe kind of what happened from the first one. Like, there's a couple scenes where you get to like see what happened, but I think it would be a lot more interesting, and maybe it would help a lot more, because the daughter, she was pissing me off. Like, she was so annoying. And again, maybe because I'm a mom, like, she was pissing me off. It's like, girl, your mom was doing this to protect you. You didn't know. You didn't like care. It's like, I get that you're upset that she kept secrets, but everyone else thought she was kind of crazy. Like, get over it, kind of thing for me. So maybe I'm a little biased. Maybe, like I said, I need to read the first one and see a little more of what she kind of went through, even though I kind of remember reading some of it, or read some of it, what she dealt with. But maybe I'll feel more kind of empathy for her and what she went through if I read the first one. So there's that. After that book, I don't know if that book put me in a slump, or if I was just already kind of in a slump, getting difficult, but I struggled so bad after that to read a book. Like, it was so hard. I was trying. I would pick up books and I would start them, and I would get a little way in, and then I'd be like, I don't want to read these. Like, on my Goodreads, if you followed me, I started so many books, and I had like 4 or 5 that it said I was currently reading, and then like I got rid of basically all of them. I think I have one on there that's still, and I honestly don't want to read it, but I was like 40% through, and I'm like, that was farther than any of the other ones, because like it was interesting at first, and I was like, oh, maybe this will get me out, but then now I'm like, no, I don't care. So, but what I did is I kept starting new books to try to find something that would catch my attention. And strangely enough, the only one that worked was The Coworker by Frida McFadden. And like I said, I had this one from my pile of library books that I got. And this one was the one that I wanted to read. And then I was like, well, you know what? Let me see if this gets me out of my slump. Because like I said, I started a lot of books, and then I was like, no. Some of them I didn't even put on Goodreads. I started, and then I was like a few pages, and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna finish reading this or start. But this one caught my attention, and a lot of I keep getting people who will complain and be like, I don't like her book. She's too simple. I've had people now I've seen who complain and say she's like a little adolescent teenage girl who, like, her writing is so simple and boring and predictable. And I thought maybe that's what I needed, so that's what I read. And I read it, and it was simple, and it was quick, and I was reading it. Like, I got like to 100 pages or so in like the first day, and that's how I was like, okay, maybe I'm getting out of it. But yeah, so this one is about Natalie. She has a coworker named Dawn. Dawn is like one of those people who's always there at a certain time, always doing this. Like, she follows the rules to the T. And Dawn isn't there. And Natalie's like, that's suspicious. What happened to Dawn? And she's asking people, and people are like, maybe she called in. And she's like, no, Dawn's never called in. Oh, maybe she's late. Nope, Dawn is never late. One time she's been late, and she was like, it was only by like a couple minutes, and it's like she freaked out. So this one, she starts basically trying to figure out what happened to Dawn, and then she basically is being kind of set up and framed for whatever happened to Dawn. Like, it's assumed that she died at first, and there's all this like stuff going back and forth, and like you get emails from Dawn, like previous chapters where emails Dawn sent to a friend, and she's describing like how she always had trouble making friends, how she's working at this new place, and she talks about Natalie and like stuff, because they're like cubicle mates, I guess, or whatever. They work side by side, and it's interesting. Like I said, it was like interesting, and it does feel like kind of like high school drama, but like I'm not gonna lie, real life, you still deal with stuff that you would think is like high school drama. So it still was like realistic, kind of. But like, a lot of things just unravel in the story, and like the plot twist at the end was kind of interesting, but also like the way it ended and like what was going on was just kind of stupid. So I only gave this 3 stars because it wasn't that great. Like the ending part of it, like the leading up to it, it was good and interesting. But then like when you get to the main part where you learn what's really going on, you're like, okay, cool. How are you gonna end this now? You're like, what? And like I said, the parts leading up to that, you're like, okay, I get it, I understand. But then, like I said, it just, I didn't like it. It bugged me. It pissed me off. I told my husband about this book after I finished. I said I did not like the ending of this book. It was dumb. It was stupid. I didn't like it and stuff. So 3 stars. So like I said, I had 2 4s, 2 3s, but I still have 1 book left. But this one is a nonfiction book, and I've seen like booktubers and stuff before who like say that they don't like reading like memoirs and nonfiction books because again, it's not meant for kind of enjoyment. This is more meant like for helping you or for like learning about someone's life and stuff. So this book I didn't read, just for a heads up. But the book I did read last is This Is Your Destiny, and it's using astrology to manifest your best life. And I've read this book before. Like I picked it up because I was like, I've seen this book before. Did I read it all the way? I said, I don't know. As I was reading this, I kept thinking this all seems really familiar. So I think I've read this before. So this is my kind of like technical reread, because technically I didn't use Goodreads until this year. So if anything I read before that is not on Goodreads. But basically this one, it's saying that you can use astrology and your signs and like figure out and understand who you are and what's going on with your life, and then like basically like control your own destiny still. Like it might be set in stone that you might have this stuff, but you can still kind of control it and handle it and deal with it. It wasn't a lot of astrology based in this book, I will say. So if you're like, I want to do astrology, like it's focused so much on astrology, I wouldn't go with this one. It's more of kind of like, hey, like here's a client I had and their birthday and their signs, and like they're talking about this and like all that, and like kind of comparing like certain things. And like it does talk, like I said, about astrology and certain things, like about your sun sign and your moon and like Jupiter and Mars or Mercury or whatever it is. And like I said, it was interesting. And like I said, I've read it before. I didn't remember reading it before. Back before I started doing basically this, I would pick up like nonfiction books, like tons of different nonfiction books, and try to read them. And 90% of the time I would pick them up, I would read a few pages, and then like set them down on like a table or something and forget about them. Or if I picked them back up, I would only read a couple pages. So like I half the time would get all these nonfiction books from the library and like start them but never finish them or never get really far. So like I said, I think this and one other book apparently are the only ones that I did nonfiction reading that I actually finished. The other one I remember because it was like Tabitha Brown book, and her book was really good. I liked her book a lot. It was interesting. But yeah, so that was this one. So again, I didn't rate that one because it's a nonfiction and it's technically self-help and stuff. And like I said, it does talk about astrology, but it's not like really heavy on astrology. And I think that if it was, I wouldn't have focused as much. I like the personal touches that the author had put in, because it made it not so like learning and trying to like be like a certain way. It was more, I'm telling you my story and how this relates to this and how you can maybe use this to do this and stuff. So that was pretty good. So those are my August reads. Like I said, let me know how you did, what you read in August, if you read any of the ones that I read, if you agree or disagree with the ratings and thoughts on these books. And yeah, I will be posting soon a TBR for September because I have a pile. I had this pile for a while, but now it's like I need a TBR to tell me, like, go read those. So make sure, if you also enjoyed this video and have any ideas or like challenges you want me to do. Like I said, I haven't done really challenges, mostly because life. Also, like, August was super busy with life because school started back up and family got sick and all that. But it's September, and the only big thing that's going on in September is a couple doctor appointments for my kids, and one has a birthday. So if we have any challenges, let's throw them in there. Let's do it. Let me get help on this TBR and let's see how that goes. But again, thank you all for watching. If you got this far in the video, please make sure that if you want to, you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again. Bye.